Good morning, everyone. I'm out collecting wood, getting ready to set some of this stuff on fire to clean it up. I've got a bunch of piles like that. If you just let a fire go over this grass, which is short, a lot of that wood would probably just scorch on top and then still be here. So I'm trying to get rid of it. It's not hot out, but it is warm enough that I don't need my jacket. My shirt's open. The next 10 days look like we're above freezing, which is good. Allows me to get more stuff done. I have a hard time sitting, doing nothing. So it's supposed to rain here in a little bit. When it's over, I might get out and try to record a video outside, but I don't know how long it's going to last and how wet it's going to be. Sometimes we miss these things entirely, but it's here probably in about an hour, hour and a half. Got that lake behind me. And my setup here. There's a pop out on the other side. So it's a pretty good deal for me right now. God has been good in this. I'm still working on my car. The next step is to replace an oil pressure sensor, which is not working. I know the engine's running. I know it has oil because this sensor's gone out before, but I don't have an indicator that says I have oil pressure. I don't recommend this for people that don't know what they're doing. If you have that problem, stop, park it, and get it to a mechanic quickly. Now this is like the 5th or 6th time that this has gone out on my car, so I'm used to it. I had to go completely out one time when I was in South Georgia, filming on the Star Trek set down there. I had to drive back to Atlanta to get it worked on. I had a mechanic look at it down there to confirm my hypothesis that it was just the sensor. He put a pressure gauge on it and it saw that it was okay. So anyhow, that's the next step. That's a relatively cheap fix, probably around $100. I say relative. All right, let me get in and start the video. What's our biggest detriment in doing what we're supposed to do? Sin. So let's talk about that. Good morning again, everyone. I'm now inside. It's sprinkling just a little bit. I was going to try to go outside, but that wouldn't work. So I'm going to have to do this inside, and I got to get this done quickly, and I may have to make it a little bit short, because once it starts raining hard, I don't care what you're in. I mean, you can hear it in the house sometimes, but it's noisy in here when it's raining hard. So anyhow, it's dry though. And my tent is in the dumpster. The tent that I stayed in for over a year. The commercial tents that you buy, I got this one at Walmart. You can get them at any sporting goods stores, different sizes. I've gotten bigger each time I've got one. My next one that I was going to get was bigger than the one I've got. But they still don't hold up. The tarp that I had over my tent, which you should put, if you're going to camp, you put a tarp underneath to protect the bottom because you don't want to poke holes in the bottom. And you want to have one over the top, not to keep the rain off. It does help, and by having it overhang, I could stand underneath my porch, so to speak, and not get wet while I'm going in and out the door. But it protected the material from the sun. In the course of a year, it will destroy the material, just absolutely destroy it. And the same thing happens with trailers too. The tops get eaten up. Whatever you put up there to seal it, it gets eaten up over time. It might take 3 or 4 years instead of 1, but you have to do maintenance on these things all the time. It's not as bad as a boat. I follow some people on YouTube that have boats, and they're all seemingly going to be retiring, some of them, and stop boating. All right, so I've got a really short lesson here I'm going to try to do, and I can probably fill it up with ramblings like I normally do, but I think when I'm doing a lot of verses, I don't want to do a long talk, because 1, you have to follow along, and 2, it becomes Charlie Brown's teacher, wah wah, wah wah, and you don't hear it or understand it. Okay, one of the things that I hadn't done yet, because I wasn't planning on rushing in and doing this, was to get this copied over where I need it, and I haven't done that yet. Because when I got sprinkled on, it was like, uh-oh, I better get inside quickly. And that I have done. And now that I'm here, I got to finish this off. And once it's in the teleprompter, I'm good to go. Because the teleprompter scrolls for me if I need it. It's also in bigger block letters that I can read, and I don't need my cheaters. I can see fine at a distance. It's up close I can't see. Before I had LASIK, which I highly recommend for those that have the proper eyes for them, you pay a little bit more up front, but you won't be buying glasses. And mine lasted 7 years before I had to have a second one done, and the second one doesn't cost anywhere what the first one did. They can do it repeatedly as long as the eye heals in between properly. Okay, so we're dealing with sin all the time. The worst thing that you can have happen with sin, and this is more for those that are non-Christians, but even Christians can do this. By blocking the Spirit, you can harden your heart. And then you can't hear the Spirit. You can't hear God. Now, God's going to drop stuff in your path for you to trip over so that you look up and go, oh God, I realize I'm wandered off the path. But we're going to look at some people who didn't have the Spirit and how you couldn't reach these people. There are going to be some people you try to present Jesus to that are going to be so hardened they don't want to have anything to do with you. In fact, they may tell you to get out of their lives and never talk to them ever again. And that could be a beloved family member. You say, okay, I'll leave, but I'm here when you need me. You can't argue with somebody who's got a hardened heart. So we're going to look at a couple of people here. First off, Jeremiah 17:9. The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? So if you don't have the plug-in to get a new heart, you're working off your own, and it's easily misleading. So you don't want to trust in your own heart. Hebrews 3:8. Harden not your hearts, as in the provocation of the day of temptation in the wilderness. These were God's people that hardened their hearts. You think Noah didn't have a hardened heart? He didn't want to preach to Nineveh. Nineveh was a wicked city. I don't know how it compared to Sodom and Gomorrah, but it's like, just get the good people out and nuke it, which is what he did to Sodom and Gomorrah. That's what Noah wanted, not Noah. In the belly of the whale, he prayed to God. So, Jonah. Okay, so turn with me now to Exodus 7:1. And the Lord said unto Moses, See, I have made thee a god to Pharaoh, and Aaron thy brother shall be a prophet. Why was that important? To the Egyptians, Pharaoh's consider to be gods. And their religious priests that they had, wizards or magicians or whatever you want to call them, they could perform certain types of miracles. Satan can perform miracles, earthly miracles, turning the staff into a snake. Moses did it with God's help, but Pharaoh's wizards did it also. But gods are always better. Moses' staff when he turned it into a snake, ate their snakes. So gods are as always better. Satan can only copy. But in the absence of God, Satan appears to be the best. So Pharaoh's heart's going to be hardened. Why? To show the people that this so-called God of yours is nothing compared to the one true God. There's no Jesus back then. So they had to do their sacrifices and all the other stuff, but they didn't even have the laws totally yet. They just knew God was there and had to have trust in God. That was Exodus 7:1. I don't know if I mentioned that. Exodus 7:2. Thou shalt speak all that I command thee, and Aaron thy brother shall speak unto Pharaoh, that he send the children of Israel out of the land. When Joseph arrived in Egypt, he interpreted the Pharaoh's dreams. He interpreted Potiphar's first, got thrown in jail, got everybody to like him in jail, got to then interpret Pharaoh's dreams and become number 2 in the land. Okay, but eventually he outlived the Pharaoh, and the next one came in and didn't know the interpretation, didn't believe in him. So they feared the Israelites at this point. They outnumber us. Exodus 7:3, and I will harden Pharaoh's heart and multiply my signs and my wonders in the land of Egypt. 10 plagues are going to come. I'm sure their magicians could do everything except the last one. The last one we get Passover from. 7:4, but Pharaoh shall not hearken unto you, that I may lay my hand upon Egypt, and bring forth mine armies and my people, the children of Israel, out of the land of Egypt by great judgments. He claimed to be a god. God's going to punish him and the people for believing he was a god. And he'll be destroyed eventually. But anybody can be turned. Saul. Our beloved Paul was Saul first. Saul's a Jewish name. Paul is a Greek name. But Saul's heart was hardened. He was out to kill Christians. He was known for killing Christians, or at least putting them in jail. If they resisted, he'd kill them. But he'd put them in jail. He was on his way to Samaria with letters saying that it's okay to let this man arrest Christians. And then that's when Jesus stopped him on the road. He knew that his heart was hardened in the wrong direction. But he was a believer in God. He wanted to serve God. He just didn't have the right information. So Jesus stopped him and talked to him, blinded him, sent him into town blind, and then he was healed by someone who would explain what was going on. And then he became Paul, just as zealous in the right direction as he was in the wrong direction. We can be like that too. And you can find people that are going to be opposing you when you try to talk to them. Let God work on them. When they come back, then you can talk to them. Plant the seed, leave it on good terms so they will trust you and come back and not fear you. Plant seeds, but leave a good taste in their mouth, so to speak, so that they will come back. You were talking about this, and I have a question about it now. Can you answer it? Don't worry, God will give you the answer. Now, there's a Saul in the Old Testament too. King Saul and a prophet Samuel. 1 Samuel 10:9. And it was so that when he had turned his back to go from Samuel, God gave him a new heart. And all the signs came to pass that day. Even back then, when Jesus wasn't down here, he could affect your hearts. This was a king of Israel. Now, he's overall not a very good king, but God tried to set him on the right path. He got a new heart. God can work with people that are not Christians. There are many non-Christians out there that aren't going to make the rapture. But if you look at their daily works, they probably would blend in and you wouldn't know they're not a Christian. Signs to come to pass that day, and when they had come to the hill, behold, a company of prophets met him, and the Spirit of God came upon him. Back then, the Spirit of God would come upon somebody, not come within somebody. It's the same general effect. You'd be able to do the will of God immediately. And he prophesied among them. So he's in amongst other prophets, and he's prophesying too. Saul is. That's pretty good. And it came to pass when all that knew him before Saul, behold, he prophesied among the people, and they said to one another, what is this has come upon the son of Kish? Is Saul also among the prophets? Even non-Christians can use the Spirit of God. Now, it's best to use it the right way, but God will help people to influence others. This is why we're told to pray for our leaders, the leaders of our country. Even the one that we just got rid of, we still needed to pray for him, and I still pray for him. He's in trouble. He's physically in trouble. They've been keeping him alive because they needed him. I bet they stopped that here pretty soon. He's probably going to pass away soon because he's on the edge of his life right now. He may or may not know Christ. He acts like he doesn't. So I pray that he does learn about Christ and has that opportunity to make that decision. But he may be in the same problem that I was in with my mother. When I finally got my mother in my presence, she was having some signs of Alzheimer's, and I moved her here to Georgia. And I made sure I took care of her. I got her into an assisted living place and made sure she was well taken care of. And I tried to talk to her about Jesus, and she seemed to be interested in listening. The problem was she had no short-term memory, which I didn't realize until a few months into the situation. I couldn't talk to her because she wouldn't remember. She had good long-term memory, so I could live in the past. She knew who I was because I was in her past. But if she had to rely on her present, she wouldn't know. So there were situations. Don't give up on people, but try to get to them early because something may happen. Like with my mother where I couldn't talk to her. So I don't know. She went to, I consider, a cult church, Science of Mind. They read out of the Bible, but they only told you things that made you feel good. Oh, and you don't have to change. And there's nothing you have to do. You don't have to accept Jesus. He was just a nice guy. And he said a few nice things once in a while, and we'll look at those, but you don't have to change. You don't have to accept him. You don't have to do anything. Just put money in the offering plate when it goes by. That's all we need. Cults. All right, we're on my final verse. 1 Thessalonians 5:19. Whoop. I'm going to go outside and see the ranger. Okay, I'm back. When the ranger toots his horn, I need to go out and talk to him. Since I'm here, he doesn't have to be here all the time. He still comes through and checks on things, make sure everything's okay if I need anything. So I give him my list and we'll see what we get. And he's stopped right now talking to one of the other county employees. All right. The final verse on this, and this is something we can all do, Christians and non-Christians, whether the Spirit is working on you from the outside or from the inside, you can quench the Spirit. We saw Pharaoh hardened his heart so that God had no influence. Moses had no influence on him. Saul could harden his heart in the Saul to Paul transition. The old Saul king could get a new heart. So God can work with us, whatever our need is. If you're working for God, and the king of Israel would be working for God, whether he admitted it or wanted to do in the first place. So 1 Thessalonians 5:19, quench not the Spirit, which we can do. You can quench, dilute the Spirit's influence. You can grieve the Spirit by continually sinning. You can harden your heart, and God won't be able to help you. Now, he can direct your paths unbeknownst to you, so that the drunk driver who's going to come out and run into the next car that comes by might stop and have one more sip before he gets in the car, and that's timing will make sure that he avoids you. But you never know. The plane crash, the tragedy in D.C., the 64 people on the plane, and the 3 or 4 in the helicopter, they didn't know they were going to die that day. Do you know what day you're going to die? You have no idea. Make sure you're right with God at all times. When he comes back, he's coming as a thief in the night. When he comes for the rapture, the world won't see the rapture. They'll see the results of it, but they won't see the God coming in the clouds. Only Christians will. The second coming, the whole world will see. That's the difference between the two. We have a rapture in our future. There's nothing that needs to happen before the rapture can happen. But the rapture has to happen so that God's timeline can proceed. It's kind of on hold. We're still talking over there. That's all right. Get me some more stuff here. So that's all I have for now. Don't sin. 1, it disappoints God. It prevents the Spirit from helping you. And I know you're going to. We all do. Try not to. Whatever it is, try not to. It's like, a smoker trying to quit smoking or an alcoholic trying to quit drinking. One day at a time. No sinning, one day at a time. If you sin, confess it, rinse and repeat. Just keep going. Get back up. If you're suffering, ask God for help. Now, you may get it, but the problem is when you're suffering. And I've been there. I've had a disc in my neck fused because of a car accident. Not my fault. A drunk pulling out of a parking lot. And I was in a great deal of pain. God found some way to operate on my neck, and we got it taken care of. And I have no pain at all. I've had no pain since. I have a limited mobility, but I have no pain. God took care of it. But it didn't happen overnight. So pray for strength while you're being patiently waiting for God to heal you one way or the other. He can miraculously just heal you, or he can, like Jesus did, or he can provide a doctor with the right remedy. God can do a number of things. Don't put him in a box. Till we meet in the clouds. God bless.